Hello again, I'm Matthew from thewetpen.com. One of the many things that America has in common with India is that both of our nations struggled for years to win our independence from the British Empire. Today's video is about one of the oldest and one of the newest of Indian fountain pen inks, Sulekha. And I mention this because Sulekha's history is inextricably tied up with India's independence movement in the 1930s. And Sulekha commemorated that history with the relaunch of their inks a few years ago, which is good. It's one of the things that makes Sulekha so interesting to me. So let me start with a broad overview of the inks I'm looking at today. There are 4 different lines of ink. There's the Swadine line of inks, which are the least expensive at 100 rupees per bottle. It's about $1.25. And I have all 4 of these colors. There's a blue, a black, a green, and a red. The red seems to have had some trouble in transit. Then there's the Samarpand line, which includes 3 inks, a blue, green, and a red. And this red seems to have had some travel issues also. But these are more expensive at 200 rupees per bottle. Still only about $2.50 US. The third collection is the Swaraj, which costs 400 rupees per bottle and contains 4 colors. But I only have one of these. It's called Twilight Shades. And finally, we have a limited edition collection called Swadeshi, which also includes 3 colors, blue, black, and red, and it is the most expensive of these lines at 499 rupees per bottle. That's about $6. And yeah, something seems a little off with this bag in the front. Incidentally, I bought most of this ink from the Ayush Paper website, and they arrived here by India Post in a box all sewn up in cloth, which seems to be the Indian way, and I love it. But let's take a step back in time. Throughout India's occupation by the British, there were periodic independence movements around the country, but in the early 20th century, the Indian freedom movement began stressing the importance of producing Indian-made goods and becoming less dependent on foreign imports. This effort was called Swadeshi, that is, self-reliance. A big part of this was for India to start producing their own fabric from their own cotton and other fibers. And so, it's no accident that when we see photos or paintings of Mahatma Gandhi, he is often shown at a spinning wheel, making thread to be woven into a rough cloth called khadi. Gandhi himself did quite a bit of writing, but at that time, much of the ink in the east of India was imported. And so, in 1932, Gandhi asked a retired chemist by the name of Satish Dasgupta to develop a Swadeshi ink for Indians to use. He did so, and then passed that ink recipe on to the Mitra brothers, who used it as the foundation to build the Sulekha Ink Company. Sulekha means beautiful writing, and the company's genesis was literally the result of a request by Mahatma Gandhi, who later used the ink himself. The company grew and moved from Rajshahi, now in Bangladesh, to Calcutta in 1938, and by the mid-1950s, they were selling more bottles of ink in India than all of the other ink makers combined, according to Sulekha. With the decline of fountain pens and some labor issues, Sulekha stopped making ink and closed their doors in 1988. But they reopened in 2006, still run by the Mitra family, and just 2 years ago in 2020, Sulekha released this, their Swadeshi line of inks. As I mentioned earlier, this line of inks contains 3 colors: Executive Black, Royal Blue, and Scarlet Red. And for whatever reason, this red has also escaped its bonds. What is it about this red ink? Luckily, one side of the label still looks normal. These bags are made of khadi, which is the cloth that I mentioned earlier, that Gandhi was making. Wikipedia says it is a hand-spun and woven natural fiber cloth promoted by Mahatma Gandhi as Swadeshi, self-sufficiency, for the freedom struggle of the Indian subcontinent. Also inside each bag is a little canvas scroll that has a history of Sulekha ink on one side, and a collection of vintage Sulekha ads on the other. Along with the ink and the fabric, the bottles and packaging are also made in India, and the glass of the bottles is a little crude, with frequent inclusions of air bubbles that are pretty large. They definitely give the feel of a smaller, artisan type of production rather than a giant industrial factory. I'm going to just swatch them here quickly to give you a general idea of the colors and consistency. This is Executive Black, and it turns out to be nice and dark and fairly neutral, but maybe a little bit blue. This is Royal Blue, which is a pretty standard medium blue, maybe not leaning as purple as a lot of Royal Blues do. A good solid blue, not as vibrant as something like Bay State blue. And here is the Scarlet Red, another nice vibrant color. This looks like a true scarlet, leaning more towards the orange side of red. The next most expensive of these inks is the Swaraj, and these are 400 rupees per bottle. Swaraj means self-rule or self-governance in Hindi, so the symbols on the label match. There's the broken chain and the butterfly in the colors of the Indian flag. This old print shows Gandhi overseeing a group of people spinning thread with the caption, "The way to Swaraj." On one side of the box, there's a quote from the father of the Indian independence movement, and I'm not quite sure what we have on the other side here. And on the bottom of the box, we have the price listed as 400 rupees, about $5 US. I'll open this box, and the interior of the box is lined with styrofoam. And while I appreciate the protection for international shipping, I do wish that they had chosen something a little more environmentally friendly. I only have one bottle of ink from this line. This one is called Twilight Shades, which is a gray, I think, but this line also contains a turquoise, a pink, and a saffron. Anyway, I'll start by swatching it on a few of my favorite papers. Here I'm using a white Rhodia dot pad, some 68 GSM Tomoe River, and some ivory Midori paper. Oh, this is much bluer than I expected. It's definitely a blue-gray while it's wet, but we'll have to see how it dries down. And with the ink mostly dry, we can see that there are some significant differences in how this ink appears, depending on the paper. It's much more of a pale blue on the Rhodia, more vibrant on the Tomoe River, and it looks almost purpley with greenish yellow shading on the Midori. Very interesting. Next, the Samarpan inks are half the price of the Swaraj. Samarpan means dedication, in the same two senses that it's used in English. The blue ink, described as blue-black, is called Ma, and honors Mother Teresa, who is so famous for her work with the sick and poor in Calcutta, which is where Sulekha has been based for more than 70 years. The green is a limited edition commemoration of 50 years of Bangladesh's independence, and the color is described as a moss green. The red ink is dedicated to International Mother Language Day, and the tragic deaths of the University of Dhaka students who were killed when they were protesting the loss of Bengali as a national language. So this color is available with an English label and a Bengali label. They sent me the English. Again, I'll swatch these three colors here on some Cosmo Air Snow paper so that you can at least get a general idea of the colors and consistency. The red is very similar to the previous red that we saw. Maybe it's a bit more saturated, but the hue looks about the same to me. I like this blue. I'm not sure I'd call it a blue-black. It's a nice, kind of a slate blue with some interesting shading. And here's the green. Nice, a medium green that's a little on the cool side. And I think that I like all of these colors better as they dry down. And finally, at least for this video, that brings us to the Swadine line of inks, which cost only 100 rupees. More expensive than the rest of the inks that I've covered in previous videos, but still only about $1. Swadine means independent or free, but the focus here is on energy independence and sustainability. When Sulekha reopened as a company in the early 2000s, they actually started out selling solar power products, and the Sulekha ink factory now runs entirely on solar energy. So here, the black ink is called carbon footprint, the blue is clean energy, the green is sustainability, and the red is global warming. So let's take a look at these colors. The carbon footprint black is fairly dark and also pretty neutral, but leaning cool rather than warm. This is another medium blue that leans slightly purple, if anything. Good saturation. And the green, this is a really vibrant lime green. And it looks as though it's dark enough that your writing will still be easily legible if you write with it. And finally, we have the global warming red. This looks pretty much like the other two reds that we've already seen. Definitely on the scarlet side, and it might be just a little bit less saturated. We'll have to look at the reds side by side. But before we do that, let's take a look at the 4 bluish inks that we have. With the Swadine and Swadeshi inks next to each other, the two look nearly identical, but there is a subtle difference. I'm not sure if it will come through in the video, but the Swadine on the far left is slightly more purple, which I didn't expect since the Swadeshi is the royal blue, but there it is. The Mother Teresa blue is still more of a blue-gray, and the Twilight Shades is even more gray, but still sort of a slate blue also. Moving on to the reds, let me get them all on the paper to start with. And yes, they still look almost identical to me. I will say that the Samarpan on the far right here is more saturated than the other two. It's just slightly darker as a result. It's saturated enough that when it's dry, there's just a little bit of bronze sheen around the edges of the darkest pools of ink. Okay, it's finally time for a few writing samples, but considering that I have talked about 12 different inks today, and that we're about 7 hours into this video already, I can't be very complete here. To start off with, here's the Swadine Blue, the least expensive of the bunch, written with a broad nib on Tomoe River paper, and the color is good with a bit of shading. And then here it is on some cheap 3-ring binder filler paper to test for feathering, and it held up fine, no problems at all. Oh, and this is on some Ayush paper, written with a much drier Lamy pen. Next we have our most saturated red, and I tried it out with a fine Ultraflex nib and a Canwright Desire Fine Flex, and it's a good orangey red, easy to read and well behaved. Here's the Mother Teresa Blue again, and I was hoping it would produce some nice shading, and there's a bit, but not as much as I had hoped. I do like the subdued color, though, and it's well behaved also. This is the Twilight Shades, written with a double broad Bach nib to try to emphasize the shading, and we did end up with a decent amount, even on the cheap paper. When writing with this ink, it ends up looking much more gray than blue. This is the Bangladeshi Independence Green, and I really like this color, but this was the first ink that I had some trouble with. On the Tomoe River paper, everything looks good. But on this cheap paper, there's quite a bit of feathering. So this ink might not be the best for taking notes at school. And since that green had some problems, I was concerned that the other green might also have some feathering issues. This is the green from the Swadine collection. But no, of course it looks great on Tomoe River. I really like this vibrant lime green too. But on the cheap paper, no problem at all. I skipped the blacks this time, but if any of you would like for me to come back and spend more time on any of these inks in particular in another video, let me know in the comment section below. And I think I'll leave it at that for now. If you found this type of video interesting, then I think that the next video in this series might be even more interesting to you. It's one that I've really been looking forward to, so if you're not already subscribed, this is a good time to do it. And that's it. Take care, everyone, and enjoy your pens and inks.